It starts quietly, always quietly, with Sarah preparing a dinner that she knows Elias loves, the scent of rosemary filling the small kitchen. She looks over at him, sitting in the armchair with a book in his lap, and she feels that familiar, sharp pull of affection in her chest. In the past, she would have walked over and draped herself across him, whispering words of love into the crook of his neck. But she has learned that for Elias, those words are not an anchor. They are a weight that makes him feel like he is sinking into the floor. Tonight, the silence in the room isn't a void to be filled, but a boundary to be respected, a realization that has taken her months to truly internalize. Elias is a man who was raised in an emotional winter where the ground was always frozen and reaching out for warmth was a risk he couldn't afford. His parents were good people in a practical sense, but they went silent when he cried, leaving him to solve his own sorrow in a dark bedroom. As an adult, Elias has turned that childhood survival tactic into a fortress of independence, believing that needing anyone is the ultimate vulnerability. When Sarah says "I love you," his nervous system doesn't register safety. It registers a debt that he isn't sure he has the currency to pay back. Sarah watches him now, noticing the way he holds his breath when she moves too quickly toward his personal space, a reflex he isn't even aware he has. She decides to use a different frequency tonight, a language designed to bypass the alarm system he has spent 30 years perfecting. She walks toward the coffee table to clear some papers, moving with a deliberate steadiness that signals she has no hidden agenda or emotional demand. She notices he is struggling with a complicated repair on a vintage camera, his hands precise but his jaw tight with the frustration of a stubborn screw. Instead of offering to help or asking him why he's so stressed, she simply says, "I've got you," and moves to the other side of the room. This phrase is a surgical strike against his fear of being alone. It offers a net without requiring him to admit that he is currently falling. It doesn't ask him to be vulnerable, and it doesn't create a social obligation to thank her or explain the mechanical difficulty he is facing. She simply leaves the offer of support in the air, a quiet promise that he is not a solitary island, even if he feels like one. Elias feels a momentary shift in his chest, a slight loosening of the invisible armor he wears even when he is sitting in his own home. By not demanding he acknowledge his struggle, Sarah has allowed him to keep his dignity while receiving the comfort of her steady presence. The night continues, and the usual tension that follows her declarations of love fails to materialize, replaced by a soft, workable atmosphere. A week later, Elias starts to pull back, as he often does when work becomes overwhelming, retreating into a shell of productivity and monosyllabic answers. The old Sarah would have chased him into that shell, sending frantic texts and asking what she had done wrong to deserve his coldness. She would have turned his need for regulation into a personal rejection, creating a cycle of pursuit and withdrawal that left them both exhausted. But now she recognizes his silence not as a lack of love, but as a necessary recalibration of a nervous system that has reached its limit. She sends him a short message. "I saw this and thought of you. Hope your day is going okay. No pressure to respond to this at all." The phrase "no pressure" is a key that unlocks the door. He usually double bolts when he feels the world is asking too much of him. When he sees those words, he doesn't feel the usual surge of guilt for not being able to provide the emotional energy a partner requires. Instead, he feels a sense of freedom, a realization that he can exist in her orbit without having to perform a version of himself he doesn't feel. He doesn't reply for 4 hours, and during that time, Sarah focuses on her own life, refusing to let his silence dictate her internal weather. When he finally texts back a simple heart emoji, it is more meaningful than 1,000 forced sentences because it was a choice, not a chore. By removing the expectation of a response, She has transformed her communication into a gift rather than a demand for his limited attention. This is the radical patience required to love an avoidant person, the ability to be a constant light that doesn't demand to be reflected immediately. Later that month, they are discussing the upcoming holidays, a time that usually triggers Eliezer's deepest fears of being engulfed by family expectations. He mentions that he might want to take a separate car so he can leave the party early if he starts to feel socially drained or anxious. Sarah feels the initial sting of disappointment, her mind jumping to how she will explain his early departure to her sisters and her mother. But she looks at the way he is watching her, bracing for a lecture on social duty or an argument about his lack of commitment to her family. She takes a breath and says, "I respect that, and I can let them know you have a busy morning the next day, so it's not a big deal." This phrase is the ultimate antidote to the fear of engulfment, the terror that a relationship will slowly erase his ability to make his own choices. By saying, "I respect that," she is validating his autonomy and proving that his needs are not an inconvenience to her, but a part of their reality. Elias relaxes visibly, his hands unclenching from the edge of the table as he realizes he doesn't have to fight her to keep his sense of self. He begins to realize that Sarah isn't trying to change him. She is building a world where his attachment style isn't a crime, but a set of instructions. This safety creates a paradox. The more she respects his need for distance, the more he finds himself wanting to be close to her. He starts to initiate contact more often, perhaps a hand on her shoulder as he walks past, or a quiet comment about his day during dinner. These are the small, quiet miracles of an avoidant heart opening up, a process that happens in the shadows rather than under a spotlight. Sarah learns to treasure these moments for what they are. Brave acts of trust from a man who spent his life believing trust was a trap. She understands that his version of intimacy doesn't look like a romantic movie. It looks like him staying in the room even when he wants to run. It looks like him sharing a small worry about his health or his career, knowing that she won't use it as a handle to pull him closer than he can go. They are building a dialect of safety, a way of being together that honors the distance as much as it celebrates the connection between them. Sarah realizes that her own security has grown through this process, as she no longer relies on his constant reassurance to feel worthy of love. She has become her own anchor, which in turn makes her a more stable harbor for him to return to when his internal seas are rough. She stops watching the clock when he is in his office, and she stops interpreting his quietness as a sign that the relationship is ending. One rainy Tuesday, Elias comes home and finds her reading on the sofa. And instead of going straight to his desk, he sits down beside her. He doesn't say anything for a long time, but then he rests his head on her shoulder and lets out a long, shuddering breath of relief. He tells her that he had a hard day and that he realized on the drive home that she was the only place where he didn't feel judged. This is his version of a declaration, a confession of dependency that is far more profound than any standard "I love you" could ever be. It is the sound of a fortress gate being lowered, not because it was battered down, but because the inhabitant finally felt it was safe to let someone in. Sarah doesn't make a big deal of it. She doesn't turn it into a milestone or a reason to push for even more vulnerability the next day. She just stays still, holding the space for him, being the steady ground he needs to finally stop running from the concept of being loved. She has learned that the love an avoidant person offers is a slow-burn flame, one that requires a specific kind of fuel and a lot of oxygen to survive. It is a love that values truth over performance and respect over intensity, a love that can last a lifetime if it is handled with care. She sees now that her previous attempts to force closeness were actually acts of fear, not acts of love, and she is grateful for the change. By learning to speak to his nervous system, she has unlocked a depth of connection she didn't know was possible with someone so guarded. Every time she says "I've got you," she is reinforcing the idea that she is a partner who can carry her own weight and some of his too. Every time she says no pressure, she is giving him the gift of his own time, which is the most valuable currency an avoidant person has. Every time she says I respect that, she is acknowledging his right to exist as an individual within the container of their relationship. These phrases have become the foundation of their new life together, a life that feels more honest and less frantic than their first year. Elias is still avoidant, and he still needs his time in the desert to recharge, but now he knows that Sarah will be there when he comes back. He no longer feels the need to hide his withdrawals, which paradoxically makes them shorter and less frequent than they were before. They have moved from a cycle of conflict to a rhythm of connection, a beautiful, swaying movement that allows for both breath and bond. Sarah looks back at the person she was and realizes that she was trying to win a war that didn't need to be fought in the first place. The real victory was in the surrender to the reality of who Elias is, and in the discovery that his version of love is just as valid as hers. She sees other couples struggling in the same trap, and she wishes she could tell them that the answer isn't to push harder, but to lean back. She wishes she could tell them that the walls are there for a reason, and that the only way through them is to show that they are no longer necessary. It is a journey of 1,000 tiny moments, of choosing silence over nagging and respect over resentment, day after day after day. It is the work of a lifetime, but for Sarah and Elias, it is the only work that has ever felt like it was truly building something that would last. They are no longer two people trying to fix each other. They are two people trying to hold a space where healing can happen on its own time. And in that space, they have found a quiet, indestructible kind of joy that doesn't need to shout to be heard or prove itself to the world. As Elias drifts off to sleep with his hand in hers, Sarah feels a sense of peace that she never found in the high-intensity moments of the past. She knows that tomorrow might bring another withdrawal or another moment of silence, but she also knows that she has the tools to navigate it. She is no longer afraid of the distance, because she knows that the distance is just the space where Elias goes to remember how much he loves her. This is the deep work of the portal, understanding that our words are the keys to the prisons we have built around our own hearts and the hearts of others. We can choose to be the jailer, or we can choose to be the one who leaves the door open and waits patiently for the other person to walk through. The choice is made in the phrases we use, the tone of our voice, and the genuine respect we hold for the autonomy of the people we love. By focusing on safety instead of intensity, we can reach the parts of our partners that have been hidden away for decades in fear. We can create relationships that are not just containers for our needs, but sanctuaries for our souls and the souls of those we have chosen to walk with. The story of Sarah and Elias is a reminder that even the most guarded heart can learn to trust if it is met with a love that is patient and kind. It is a reminder that we are all capable of change, but that change happens best in an environment of total acceptance and zero pressure to be anything but ourselves. Take these lessons into your own life and watch as the people around you begin to relax and open up in ways you never thought possible. The power of your words is immense, and using them to create safety is the highest form of emotional intelligence you can ever develop. We are here to help you find those words and to understand the deep psychological currents that run through every interaction you have with the world. This is a journey of constant discovery, and we are honored to be the ones who help you navigate the map of the human heart and all its mysteries. Every episode is a new opportunity to learn how to love better, how to live more fully, and how to connect with the people who matter most to you. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of the mind and for having the courage to try a new way of being in your most important relationships. Your commitment to growth is the light that will guide you through the darkest moments of your journey toward a life of genuine connection and peace. Keep practicing the language of safety and keep holding the space for the people you love to become the best versions of themselves on their own timeline. The world needs more people who are willing to love with this kind of depth and this kind of respect for the individual journey of the human soul. We will see you in the next episode as we continue to dive into the mysteries of the mind and the beauty of the human experience together. If you found this exploration of avoidant attachment and the power of safe language helpful for your own journey, please subscribe to my channel, Deep Mind Portal,